Welcome to the Second in Command podcast, produced by the COO Alliance and brought to you by its founder, Cameron Herold. In the Second in Command podcast, we talk to top COOs who share the insights, strategies, and tactics that made them the chief behind the chief. And now, here's your host, Cameron Herold.
Viviane Ford is the Senior Vice President of Operations at comma.ai, based in San Diego. Most new cars on the road today are built with features designed to assist with driving, but fail to deliver. Comma's open source software, openpilot, enables your car to steer, accelerate, and brake automatically in its lane. It's easy to install and trusted by thousands of drivers with over 10,000 miles. Viviane previously worked at Eastwick Communications for 1 year, back when it was 6 people in a garage in San Francisco. So Viviane, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you're working on. Welcome to the Second in Command podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So tell us just a little bit more about Comma so we understand kind of where these devices are being installed or how they're being installed in cars. What kind of cars are we installing them in? Because I'm especially excited about autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, totally. So basically, Comma sells a hardware development kit that works on existing, basically 2016 and newer Hondas, Toyotas, Subarus, whole range of supported cars. We sell this hardware that runs our open sourced software. So back in 2017, we open sourced this thing called openpilot, which is essentially autopilot for existing vehicles. So a driver assistance system that takes you on the highway and will drive you 90% of the time. And then when you're doing, back road driving, you obviously take over. And so we have thousands of cars driving with both the comma Eon and openpilot, and we have over 10 million miles of driving data collected, and are just working on upping that number and getting more and more compatible cars and more people with the system in their car.
Unbelievable. Okay, so this is a third-party software then. Are you starting to license this software to any of the car companies, or are you just selling this as like an aftermarket addition to vehicles?
So the software, the software is under MIT license. So we open source this on GitHub. If someone wanted to go and build a system that ran the software and then sell that system, they'd be completely entitled to. We basically just sell to whoever wants to buy it. If Ford wanted to buy, 100 comma Eons, the hardware and install it in their vehicles, they could go ahead and do that. We don't have a business development department. We have a website with an order now button, and we will fulfill on Mondays and Thursdays.
Wow. Okay. So I was 10 years ago, I rode in the first Google experimental car at TED. I was at the main TED conference sitting in the audience, and someone from Google came out and talked about this vehicle, and then they showed a video, and I'm sitting beside Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates is in the audience, and they're talking about this car that none of us had seen. I don't think very many had even heard about it 10 years ago. And then the person who's doing the demonstration said, by the way, if you want to drive in it, it's out this door on the parking lot. And 1,800 people stood up and went running. And I got to drive in it. I have a video on my laptop of me driving in this Prius 10 years ago with Matt Groening, the founder of The Simpsons, was beside me in the vehicle. And we drove on a test track 10 years ago at 45 miles an hour. And I was just going, holy shit, like this thing is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I've since owned 2 Teslas. I've been driving them now for years. So MIT Labs developed the software and then you guys are third party licensing it, or did you develop?
It's MIT license. Yeah, we developed the software. Yeah, it's under MIT license, but we did develop the software. And so, basically we, we maintain the software. The beauty of having open source software is that, one, you get a community that can contribute to it. So there's so many makes and models out there that are a little different in how they run. And so when you have a community member that wants this to be supported for their car, and if they go through the effort to, send a pull request to have their car supported and merged with, the next version of openpilot, like that's fantastic. You're building a community of people that are, actively working to basically to push forward the technology. And also a beautiful thing about the open source code is that code is, anyone can, if anyone's concerned with the code, they can go and read through it. They can, if there's safety concerns or whatever, to some extent, code is speech. So they can go ahead and have their, have a look at everything we do and decide for themselves if this is something they want to put in their car, instead of getting into, like a Honda Civic with the lane keep assist system and having really little idea of how it works, and just kind of, trusting it and engaging it and seeing it for yourself, how it works on the road instead of.
Why am I scared of this? Why is this got me like with the open source idea that somebody can just download this and put it into their car? Why is that scaring the hell out of me? When again, I've been, I drove my Tesla Model 3 from Scottsdale to Vancouver and let it drive 2,000 of the 2,200 miles on its own. But this scares me for some reason. What am I missing?
I think there's a couple of reasons that this is scary. And the first one is that anytime there's a autonomous vehicle accident, like, it is so publicized. It's publicized until people can just, get every single last click on their story possible. So we have so many ideas in our head that, like, these systems aren't safe, or, oh, but did you see that, this autopilot accident caused this issue? Whereas it's like, sure, along with that article, what if we also publicized how many people died just by driving a regular car that day?
Car, sure, totally.
So I think there's that level that's a little alarming. The open source code, I think, also scares people because I don't want to say that any of, like, responsibility is a hard word to place in this situation, but it's kind of like, hey, take a look at our code. If you like our code, then maybe you'll, want to explore and experiment with it and see how it runs with your Honda Civic. And so there's like an active like exploration phase that the driver is using, because they're downloading this code from the internet and they're trying it in their vehicle, as opposed to kind of a black box delivery of, Tesla Autopilot, here you are, take a drive.
But where are they testing this? So they're downloading the software and they're just throwing it in their car and they're going for a drive around Scottsdale?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, but the
Wow.
thing is, we have millions of miles of driving data from this. We have hundreds of YouTube videos of people driving around with this system. So,
wow.
Where are they testing it? Like, they're, it's better tested almost than any other self-driving car company's product, because they don't even have a product, really. Like, there's only so many. I mean, part of the big issue too is, like, there's so many edge cases with driving that it's impossible to hand code all of the edge cases of driving.
Sure.
So I think like Elon Musk had a line when we first came out with the system, and he was like, sure, 99% of this is easy. It's the 1% that's really hard, which is really true, right? But when you try to capture all of the edge cases, like Waymo with, like, I don't know what their fleet is. Let's say their fleet's like 100 cars or whatever, but that's still just, that's not going to get you all of the edge cases. And so when you're just relying and depending on, all of the data from your own cars, as opposed to kind of like decentralizing the data consumption and getting data from people all over the world, all of a sudden you have a much more, like, fully packaged kind of data exploration to go off of.
Were there a lot of legal hurdles in getting launched or getting the product out the door?
Certainly. So yeah, I mean, we got a letter from the National Highway Transportation Safety Authority back in 2016, and so so we actually, I think we open sourced in 2016. Who knows? The years are all the same. But regardless, they were concerned. We had announced at TechCrunch that we were selling this product with openpilot on the product, and that this product was going to drive your car. I mean, it was a lot of hype. The product can't drive, nothing can drive your car. You still can't sit in a fully self-driving car. Yep. Everything is still a driver assistance system, still level 2. And so there was definitely, I think similar to when you ask, why am I scared of this? There's just a lack of information around a lot of this stuff. And so a big thing with open sourcing is like, how do we show the information? How do we, how do we just explain like what's going on and publish more of the information, publish more of the data? We've definitely tried to do this with like more Medium posts. We've tried to publish more, like this is how we're using the data. This is how we're being compliant with NHTSA's requests. They basically sent a list of 17 questions. I think it was about 17. And they were totally reasonable. They were totally reasonable questions asking us, like what is this product? What is it doing? How can you guarantee certain aspects about the product? But apart from that, I think like the trend of the general self-driving space is moving more towards like not even away from regulation, but like when you have, Waymo come out and announce that they like hyped it up a little too much for the first X years that they've been, working on self-driving cars, or you have all of these companies that are slowly realizing like this problem's actually really difficult. Like, not that regulation catches up, but it just, the problem slows down, the
Yep.
pace people think it'll be solved slows down, and that reassures people automatically.
Yeah, I think it's also people are getting more and more comfortable with it now. We're not hearing about the accidents constantly. We have heard the arguments now that there's other cars that are crashing. We're not hearing about those. So I think we're just getting more and more comfortable with the idea. And then we're also, 4 years ago, it was just weird, or 5 years ago, it was weird hearing a Tesla creep up behind you. And now it's like, oh, you almost can hear them now, which is so bizarre, right? We could never hear them before, and now we can hear them, which is really strange. So how did you get involved in the company?
So the founder, I lived in this house called the Crypto Castle in San Francisco, very San Francisco. It was basically a 3-story townhouse in downtown San Francisco with a bunch of people who were interested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And George, the founder, moved into the basement of this house. He was basically looking to start his own self-driving car startup and needed a basement where he could hack away at a car. And so I met him and became friends. I just lived and saw him develop this company for the first 7 or 8 months. And then in about a year later, about 3.5 years ago, he was looking for an operations person. And I went up to him and I said he should hire me, and definitely took some convincing. About 2 weeks later, I think I was offered the job, and I took it with very little operations experience.
That's really cool. Okay, so you guys got involved. You saw it in the earliest of early stages, and then you went to did you launch at Disrupt in New York?
It was SF Disrupt.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that was 2016, very early stages. He had done a Bloomberg article in 2015, which launched. I think that it was really the first unofficial official launch of just Comma as a company, and people were intrigued to see what he was up to, what he was doing. And then at TechCrunch, we announced this whole, shebang of a product, kind of trying to fall into the hype of self-driving cars before you quickly realize that all of that is dangerous to fall into. And then we open sourced. Correct myself. We open sourced the software in 2016. We had no hardware. We had hardware. We had open sourced the hardware required to run on the software, but we weren't selling it. And then we had a community of people just building out this hardware and working on the product. And then we launched the comma.ai, the hardware that supports openpilot if people want it. Also, we launched it. It was a dash cam. So, for people, dash cam development kit, launched that in 2017 and kind of have consistently been updating with new versions of both Eon and openpilot.
And how are you funded?
So through A16Z, we're still Series Seed. A16Z led our two rounds. We did 2 Series Seeds.
How much have you raised so far?
About 8.1 million.
It's pretty substantial for a seed.
Yeah, so it was 2 seeds. So the first seed was 3.1 million. The second seed was 5 million. We have revenue. We have revenue, and we keep we keep operations very, very lean. We're a team of 12 or 13. it's, the real goal has been, how do we become profitable, which is not a question that startups ask themselves. But I think it was, it was important to be like, if this is going to be sustainable, how can we make money along the way, as opposed to just blowing through millions and millions of dollars to develop the technology that you can't even ship,
I was brought in as a coach for the team at Hootsuite about 4 or 5 years ago, and I led their strategic planning retreat, and I pushed them to consider profitability as a way to scale instead of more equity and debt financing, and they decided to go for it. And I'm like, I don't understand why people don't. Like, it's so simple to actually build a real company if you decide to,
right.
And you have way more control. So that is your focus then?
Totally, yeah. And what you said was build a real company. That's exactly what we want to do. I mean, it's way more control. It's also just the easiest way to know that you're actually adding value to the world is, are you making money?
It. Yeah. If people are buying it and you're making money off of it, and it keeps you lean, it keeps you smart and scrappy, it's amazing. We think when WhatsApp sold for like 1.4 billion, they only had 50 employees.
Yeah.
So you guys are on the same trajectory. So, and I love that he was working with getting some early stage free PR as well. I wrote a book about a year ago called Free PR, and it talks about how to leverage free publicity for your brand and how to generate it in-house instead of using a PR firm.
Yeah.
And then how to kind of, because you guys have got some huge upside clearly with PR, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, also, I mean, so George, our president, the founder, he comes from like a hacking background. So people have like followed his, what he's been up to and what his projects have been throughout. And so that was helpful too. And also it's like an underdog story that, first of all, Silicon Valley loves. And second of all of the people in San Francisco love, where it's like, this one guy puts together some self-driving car that competes against Teslas, and whether or not it's true, whether or not, how much hype you want to have, if you get a story like that to start off your company, people are going to be excited to see where it's at.
Yeah, I missed out on the seed round at Tesla by not putting $5,000 deposit down on the original Roadster.
Oh man,
15, 16 years ago. Yeah, that was a bad call. I also told the founder of Uber it was a stupid idea when we heard him deciding before he launched. I took him to Burning Man and he was explaining it to me. I'm like, this was before he hired Travis. So I think you're onto something. If I told you it's a bad idea, go all in though as well. Because
I was worried about it. It's like, can you tell me it's actually a bad idea?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I know how you got involved in the business, and when you started dealing with the whole open source, what can you teach us about that? What have been the hassles? What have been the pitfalls and the struggles with the whole open source side of the business?
I mean, honestly, there are not many. I mean, the beauty of being an open source business is that it forces you to, like, you're not going to just open source your software and then be very secretive about everything else you do. You're going to be an open company. And so you're going to approach what you do with an open mindset. And so kind of a default mindset of Comma is like, publicize what's happening, be honest about what's happening. There's nothing, we don't want to have things to hide, because if you have secrecy, you probably don't have anything at all, is the idea. And so I think that that's definitely a very positive reinforcement of what open source does. For me, like from a personal perspective, I joined Comma from like a tech PR firm that was very much like embargoed until this date. Don't you dare break that, And so I enter into this world of Comma where all of these people are deeply admire the open source community, and you can't help but get stressed about potential competitors that decide to use this or get a leg up on whatever they're doing. But then you realize that that's exactly the point, where like if you do open source this and you do give even like people who aren't necessarily direct competitors, but if this information is out there in the world, then everyone already has a +1 to having this information.
Awesome.
So we just like help, and also like if a competitor comes along and builds a better hardware system that's going to run this system better, well, then you better work your ass off to make sure that that's not the case, and that your system is always promising, the better experience for users. So definitely for me initially, it was kind of like a jolt of a different way of thinking.
That's cool. So you said you came in and you didn't have any operations experience. So how have you learned it?
I mean, on the job. um, yeah, I think the thing I quickly realized was that operations, you don't want glory in operations. You want to be like as behind the scenes as possible, because it means that the company is being run and people aren't realizing that something's an issue. If you don't want there to be issues. Which was a very interesting, just a different approach of like, okay, how do I go about this? How do I make sure that the things that are happening are happening in a way that people can do their job. And thankfully, like Comma grew with me. Comma, when I joined Comma, was I think we had 10 or 11 people because we had interns, and those interns left, so we were like down to 6 at one point. So a 6-person company, if you've never done operations before, you can learn and you can like manage quickly. And because Comma has scaled at like a very, I think, like appropriate rate, it's been a good way of like learning. And yeah, I mean, when you're in San Francisco, every other person does operations to some extent. So,
right. Osmosis.
Yeah, exactly.
How about attracting talent? I mean, the Bay Area's got to be one of the most competitive areas for tech talent, for sure, and for even for the entrepreneurial scene. So how are you attracting talent?
Yeah, so this was very interesting. And one of the reasons we actually moved to San Diego.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're in San Diego now, too.
We moved down to San Diego. I think initially, I mean, working at Comma is different than working at almost any other company. So already with just like the open source factor, you're going to attract people that are interested in the open source community. And that was key. So like number one way for us to attract talent was like through GitHub, poring over people's GitHubs, making sure that, like people were already contributing to the open source community. People who are excited about those projects are going to be really excited about, open sourced assistance system. So that was kind of a helpful way. Also, I think that, it is really hard to, when Google's going to pay a machine learning engineer hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're trying to keep your startup very lean and you're not going to offer that. What you get on the flip side, though, is people that are in it because they really do believe that this company is going to succeed, which is always the goal. And so, people who come in and take, you give a sliding scale of equity and salary, and people who take like, this lowest salary and the highest equity is always like a positive, reinforcement of where this person thinks the company's going. Moving to San Diego, so it was hard. It's obviously super hard to recruit. It's obviously very hard to attract talent. And going to San Diego, one of the ideas was like, okay, maybe we'll be able to attract talent more easily. Qualcomm's here. Maybe we'll be different than the thousands of startups in the Bay Area that are all trying to attract the same people.
Yep.
And
has that played out?
So ironically, we a lot of our employees, not a lot, but a decent amount now have come from our community. And so that's proven to be like more and more the best way to get people, is people that find themselves in the Comma community are already interested. And then if they've, contributed really positively, floating the idea of joining the company is like an exciting next step. And also just kind of realizing that San Diego is also a more pleasant place to live, I think, than the Bay Area. Bay Area is very expensive.
San Diego is amazing.
Yeah, San Diego is great. It's easier to attract people from, wherever in the U.S. to move to San Diego than to move to San Francisco.
Well, San Diego's got a pretty good technology sector as well, pretty good entrepreneurial sector.
Totally. There's a lot of biotech, but, also that helps because then we're not biotech, so we're different.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of my I've coached a lot of companies, and I've got a number of different coaching clients that are in San Diego, and then a couple of our members of our COO Alliance are in San Diego as well. It's a great market. So what are you guys struggling with right now? What are the pain points?
What are the pain points? I think the main pain point is like, what do you want your company to look like? You've built this company and you're working towards profitability. So this is for now the ultimate goal, like in the immediate future. But what kind of a company do you scale into? What kind of company do you become? How do you decentralize the responsibilities of the company, so you don't have like one single point of failure being your CEO or whatever. How do you work on, I guess at the core of it, like it's our product and the company, we talk about a lot, stability. So stability on the product and stability in the company. And how do you build something that will outlast everyone that is currently at this company? Those kind of thoughts that you have when if you're profitable, you can self-sustain for hopefully a very, very long time. And then what does that look like in the future?
So how are you kind of giving the vision to your team right now? How are you articulating it or getting them aligned and inspired? And then how do you also keep a group of people super excited when they're coming on for equity and the company's seemingly moving towards a profitability focus? Does that distract them at all? I mean, and by all rights, they should be focused on profitability anyway, but if it's build or bust, that's a different goal.
So how do you keep people incentivized is an interesting
No,
one.
not less incentivized and more aligned and inspired, with the vision.
Yeah.
So they're not just trying to focus on an exit.
I think what helps is having an actual user base. So we have like a community Discord, and a lot of our users are on that Discord, and a lot of our employees are on that Discord talking with users, like having beta programs and stuff like that. That helps because you literally see what you are doing affecting people that you are talking with. Being a 13-person company, what you work on has a big impact. You're not working on like a project with 10 other people and then have that be scrapped. Like if you don't do something, it's obvious and it hurts, it hurts the company. So I think that alignment like will come naturally. Just people seeing, what their work has. And then in terms of like the profitability equity thing, I don't even think it's directly related to comma when people hear that. I think it's more of a realization of like the state of VCs and the state of San Francisco and Silicon Valley, where like that money will dry up. The money that they're just handing out to companies will dry up. So if you do want to succeed, if you do want to win at self-driving cars and solve self-driving cars, what better way than to create a profitable company that doesn't rely on these investors? And I think that mindset just helps in general, people get on board with putting profit first.
Can you, and I know that you're still privately held and still seed round, can you disclose some numbers to us in terms of users and revenue numbers at all, or do you keep that stuff private still?
We're pretty open about that. So we had, I think our highest sales month was around 160 grand in revenue.
Okay.
And we spend at a rate of about probably 180 grand a month is our burn rate.
Okay.
So close to getting those two numbers very aligned, which would be great. And ideally we don't need to raise money again. Ideally we are profitable early next year and can continue sailing. How
are you getting the word out right now? How are you guys getting the buzz? Is it PR? Is it just your community? Is it
It's really, it's community. It's really the community. We don't have anyone here that does marketing. We don't really have anyone here that isn't an engineer, apart from like myself. I do operations. That's kind of engineering in some source, but in some way, but we don't have a marketing department. We don't have biz dev department. So it's really the community. It's really like, if someone posts a YouTube video and then it gets on Reddit or something like that, like how are those sales coming? We also have, it's not like the simplest thing when you purchase the Eon dev kit. It's still, you're like, is my car supported? You have all these questions. So there's still a lot of low hanging fruit of the people that come to our website. How can we make it super clear for them? If they want to purchase it, what are they purchasing? What they need to do? And so, but definitely like getting more people to the site is of course a goal. I think we're still just focusing on like the people who do come to the site. How can we make sure that it's abundantly clear what they could be buying or not?
And this is not expensive. This is $600.
Yeah, very much expensive.
That's ridiculous. I think, by the way, the autonomous vehicles will be the cause of the next baby boom. You guys can quote me on that. You can put that in all of your PR for real, right? You think about like people driving in LA traffic for an hour. What are you going to be doing? You're not going to be hanging out in the front seat. You're going to hop in the back, and like that will be. Then I'll be like, yeah, I'll commute to work. Like people know I don't want to work from home anymore. I want to commute.
Yeah.
Do you run on a remote team, or do you all run out of the office together?
We have one guy who's remote, but he was with us for 2 years, so he knew very well how the company worked. But really try to be everyone in the office just helps so much more with, and also like I joke that we don't really have any meetings. We have one meeting a week on Monday mornings for, just to sync up what's happening. But I kind of joke that like everything is a meeting at comma, just in the sense that like, at lunch, when you miss a conversation, you're missing a lot, you really, at all times people are talking about their projects and like what's the holdup, and so it's pretty important to be.
Yeah, I think it's critical in the early stage for sure of a business to actually have that cooler time and lunchtime and just kind of interacting. That beta transfer is amazing that happens there. So how about yourself, and what are you working on your skills right now as a second in command?
So I run operations here. So basically everything non-technical. So I do, operations, recruiting, accounting, legal, HR, all of that kind of stuff. Right now, personally, I'm working on, so we have some exciting things coming next year that we're working on, and recruiting in this area, recruiting in San Diego, understanding like how do we build out teams here for, reaching out to people in the US and abroad, and kind of all the things that come in operations. If I were to give you like a given day, it would change drastically from one day to the next.
How about technology tools? What tools do you use, or does the company use to scale, to manage?
Yeah, so for operations, I don't know exactly if these are the tools you're thinking, but like I'm such a big fan of these adorable startups in San Francisco like Gusto and Zero that are incredibly helpful and have fantastic customer support because they need to be, because they want to be.
Yep.
I have been like very almost pleasantly happy that the startup world is a thing, even though it can be unbelievably frustrating. But when you're trying to get corporate credit cards for your employees from Wells Fargo, and they require everyone's social security numbers and all of these things that are such a headache beyond belief, and that makes everyone feel super uncomfortable to have to give to some big bank, and then you stumble upon a company, Brex, that you literally just sign up online and get corporate cards mailed to you in like 3 days. I mean, it's so like the convenience of so many of these companies is, to me, I'm so happy with it, because otherwise it's such a pain in the butt to have to deal. So yeah,
So Gusto's the HR payroll software. Zero is the accounting software.
For Brex's corporate cards. So we use those. Otherwise, I think.
Considering you started out of the crypto castle, do you accept any cryptocurrency as payment for your products?
We used to, and then it was such a pain in the butt with taxes to have to claim, how it just became so not worth it. Yeah. But we had, back when we had this open sourced hardware called the comma Neo, a terrible neon green color, really. We back in the early days, there was a company that was building them and selling them. I think they were building them and selling them for 1 Bitcoin, which at the time was probably $700. And then December 2017, people know Bitcoin rises to 17 grand. So I hope that, I forget, Neodriven is their name. I hope they did well with their Bitcoin accept transactions.
Yeah, I got to go back and look at the dates, but I think it was 2009 that I was telling people on Facebook. 9 or 10, I don't know, it was freaking early. Maybe it wasn't that early. Maybe it was 2012, but it was really early. It was when Bitcoin was $400, and I said I was accepting Bitcoin as payment for speaking events and for coaching. And people are like, "You're an idiot. Why would you do that?" But I ran a digital currency company 20 years ago. I had Starwood Hotels and Bose Stereo and Avis Rent-A-Car, Hard Rock Cafe, all paying me with a digital currency instead of a US dollar. We sold the company in 2000. So yeah, we had 30,000 businesses buying and selling using a digital currency.
No way.
Yeah, it was called ubarter.com. We sold for 64 million, but it was a real business.
They were open to using digital currencies.
Oh yeah, I had Starwood hotels. We had little swipe cards you could actually use it. Some of them using their merchant processing, and it was just a multilateral trade. And it wasn't back. We met with guys at Goldman Sachs and they're like, wait, so what's backing your barter dollar? And we went, nothing. And they went, oh my God, you print money. And we went, yeah. And they're like, you're like a country. And we're like, yeah. Pretty much. We actually print our own currency because if we needed more money, we would just give ourselves a credit line. We'd go buy furniture for the office with our own cryptocurrency. It was crazy. So I've always believed in it. I think there's a huge need for it, but I think one day it'll come back around that you can start accepting it again.
Yeah. Oh, yes, certainly. Yeah, it's on the up and up, despite how people might feel about it.
So when you're a lean startup in a smaller team and you're focused on profitability and not burning through cash, what are you trying to say no to?
It's a good question because there's a very fine line between like being too strict with the cash and, therefore not having where does productivity and cash spend meet perfectly. So one thing that we did a big overhaul of was services, random services that you sign up for that you forget that you're, signed up to. And then you realize that, at the end of the year, you spent 15 plus grand on services. So cutting down on that. Also, honestly, a lot of a good amount of PR can be ridiculously expensive if you don't know how to, either if you don't know how to use ad spend correctly, or, you can hire a lot of consultants that a lot of times don't actually add value and that are ridiculously expensive. Yep. So it's how do you, what can I do? How much would it cost if someone else did it? And what's the value if someone else does it versus me doing it? And I think most people too, because it's a small team, it's faster for them to just do most things on their own instead of using, another service or whatever. But also, 13-person team in San Diego with, we have competitive salaries now that we're in San Diego, but in SF, definitely less. You start to, it starts to almost naturally be more lean, certainly naturally be more lean than when you're in San Francisco.
You kind of have to be. Take a look, by the way, at my book, Free PR. I think you guys might have a huge opportunity to leverage free publicity in-house, how to generate. It's how, when we built 1-800-GOT-JUNK, we landed 5,200 stories by ourselves with no PR firm. And that was prior to Facebook launching. So we had no social media platforms to actually leverage our PR on. That was all individual uniques, including Oprah. So,
by the way, I should shout out 1-800-GOT-JUNK because you guys saved us so many times. Awesome. Yeah, if we were working out of a house in San Francisco, that stuff, that piles up quickly.
He was our 5th franchisee, the guy who owns the Bay Area. He does 20 million just in San Francisco on junk removal. Yeah. He's killing it. Yes. All right, last question we've got. If you were to go back to your younger self, just starting out in your career, what word of advice would you give yourself that now you know to be true, but you wish you'd known then?
I would say at the end of the day, responsibility falls on you, which seems like an obvious thing to say. But if you are, even if you're managing someone and they mess up, that inevitably falls on you. And the second you think in that way, you start to think more like the company. You start to think in a much more productive way to actually getting stuff done, to actually, shipping out products and moving a company along, because it's no longer individually based. So, thinking in the sense of, what responsibility do I give? How do I trust that person will get it done? And if they don't, okay, that's on me. What do I do?
Yeah. Or what did you do wrong that let that happen? I think that's amazing. Ben Horowitz in his book, Hard Thing About Hard Things, talked about kind of that level of introspection that's really important for leaders, that often when we're firing somebody, we're like, oh, I'm glad they're gone. They're terrible at this. They're terrible at that. It's like, well, you hired them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
right.
what was wrong with the interviewing process? What was wrong with the recruiting process? What was wrong with the top grading or the reference checks or the training program or the leadership, or like, how did you let this happen? And when we take that level of ownership and introspection, it's powerful.
And also on top of that, it doesn't happen again, because now it's like, traced back to this point when this was a mistake, as opposed to like, let it go as, oh, it's their fault. It's going to happen again.
Yeah, that's awesome. Viviane Ford, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you sharing everything you guys are doing with Comma, and really excited about what you're doing for autonomous vehicles.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
All right, have a good one.
You've been listening to Second in Command, brought to you by COO Alliance founder Cameron Herold. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe. For more best practices from industry-leading COOs, visit COOalliance.com.